Good afternoon, folks. I'm Doc Hamels, and I will be your moderator this afternoon for the 2014 debate for the New York State Assembly seat in the 150th District. It's my pleasure to be working with these gentlemen today, and I want to thank them right off the bat. Barrie, Yochim, and Andy Goodell have agreed to come over here with us at Destination Chautauqua and to give you, the viewer, the opportunity to have a listen, call in if you choose to, and we'll get to that in a minute, and to have an opportunity to find out what these gentlemen stand for and to make a educated vote on November 4th when the time comes. I want to go over the format today. It's going to be pretty basic. The debate format will go as follows, and we're going to get that up on the screen here for you. All right, just a second here. There we go. All right, what I'm going to basically do is ask questions that have been determined by the staff and our viewership throughout the last couple of weeks. So we'll have 6 predetermined topics. Both Andy and Barrie have had those topics prior to the show, and I will frame the question, and then they will have an opportunity to respond for a couple of minutes, and then each one will have a minute to rebuttal or comment after the other person. And then we will go to questions that we have received from you, which we would call our submitted questions. And then we will go into those questions, and if you have a question, we will substitute that question, those submitted questions, with a question from our viewers. Now, if you do have a question and you would like to pose those to our candidates today, please, these are the opportunities for you to do so. And this is live. You're on October 18th, and it's approximately 3 minutes after 12. If you're on any other day watching this, you cannot call in. You cannot Twitter us at that. Well, you can Twitter us, but nobody will be answering. So you can go to Facebook, and you can do a search there. You have Twitter, we have email, and then, of course, our phone, 753-5225, and we do have someone that is going to take your call and write it down and submit it to me as the moderator. Please, if you do call, this is not an opportunity to berate any candidate or bring up an issue outside of what we're talking about. So let's stick to topic. And my job today will basically try to move things along and in a timely fashion. And I've talked to both gentlemen, and I will try to politely let them know that time is running short. We all have monitors before us. For instance, I have 32 seconds left of my part here. And so we'll keep moving things right along. So again, welcome to the 2014 debates for the 150th District seat for New York State Assembly. And gentlemen, we are going to give each candidate an opportunity to speak. And according to our coin toss, Mr. Yochim, and we were going to call him Barrie from here, and Mr. Goodell, Andy, we're going to go informal. So, Mr. Yochim, you have an opportunity right now to speak for 3 minutes on anything you want to say.
Oh, thanks, John. I appreciate it. And thanks to the Access Channel 5 viewers out there in the community. Again, my name is Barrie Yochim. In my professional life, I'm Executive Director of Meals on Wheels of the Jamestown area, which provides more than 130,000 meals in central and southern Chautauqua County. I'm very fortunate to take this opportunity to run in this election to be your next Assemblyman. I'm a lifelong resident of Chautauqua County. I've grew up in Finley Lake, great little hamlet of Finley Lake. Graduated from Clymer Central School in 1986. Went away to college and married at college in Southern Ohio. But after that, when I graduated in 1990, came back to Chautauqua County and actually Cattaraugus County, came to work for an entity in the county being the Jamestown Post-Journal as the Cattaraugus County Bureau Chief, which got me going learning and listening about politics, and that got me going 24 years ago to listening to the community, learning about the community, projecting the views in the community, which I've been able to, fortunately, to carry out these last 9 months in the campaign. Following that time in 1994, I was selected and gratefully selected to be the first Director of Communications for United Way of Southern Chautauqua County. And I'm pleased during my 5 years there at United Way that we were able to meet our fundraising goal every year, raise nearly $6 million to provide funding in the community for human service programs. And people in the community from all over the place, countywide, different areas, helping make sure services are provided in the community. 5 years later, I was able to become one of the executive directors of one of those agencies, namely the Meals on Wheels of Southern Chautauqua County in Jamestown, which is where I've been the last 15 years. My key component is I've been in the community. I love being in the community. I love helping out in the community. It's been a passion of mine these last several years. The good thing about that is you get to meet so many people. I've been able to rejoin with people that I met with years ago, either working at the Post-Journal or working at United Way, or my daily day-to-day jobs with Meals on Wheels. I'm also taking this opportunity to expand upon my horizons. I'm viewing this as an opportunity to elevate myself to a particular location where I can help out even more people than I do just in Central and Southern Chautauqua County. I've had 2 opportunity roles in my professions in the last 15 years as far as representing our community on a statewide level. When I was at United Way, I was actually one of the founding members of a statewide marketing task force and also the key co-chair of that first opportunity for that organization. And what that did was we were able to work on a statewide basis to provide services to local United Ways to actually make a common message to make it easier for United Ways to raise money in their local communities. Unfortunately, for the last 5 years, and specifically the last 2 years, I've been the State Meals on Wheels Association president, which has been really a thing of pride for me that someone from Chautauqua County has been president of an organization that covers on a statewide basis. And I've been able to work with organizations and communities such as Rochester, New York City, Rockland County, all across the state, helping out providing services across the state.
Okay, thank you, Barry. And now, Andy, if you would like to take a moment and talk about yourself and why you're here today.
Well, thanks, Zach, and thanks, Barry, and thanks to all of you for watching this program and taking some time out of your day. Hopefully, we'll be able to shed some light on our positions and leave you as a better educated voter. I've really appreciated the opportunity to represent you in the New York State Assembly for the last 4 years. And my focus as your assemblyman has been on jobs, taxes, education reform, welfare reform, repealing the SAFE Act, and moving our county forward. Looking at some of those priorities, I think the top priority that we have here in Chautauqua County is to build our local economy. And in order to do that, our county and our whole state has to be more business friendly. If we're not more business friendly and we're not more competitive, we're going to continue to see companies like ConAgra move to states that are more business competitive. So in an effort to make our state more business competitive and to increase the jobs here in Chautauqua County, I was strongly supporting a number of tax cuts. A manufacturing tax cut has now brought manufacturing taxes down to where they were in 1968. We've enacted a middle class tax cut that helps all of us in the middle class. Those tax rates are now where they were 50 years ago. We're moving forward on cutting taxes on utility rates. That'll help not only businesses who are trying to employ people, but it'll help each individual. We've moved forward with tax cuts that help farmers, like the estate tax cut. And we've also, by the way, capped agricultural assessment changes. All those changes are designed to make New York State more business competitive, and we're starting to make progress. According to the Tax Foundation, New York's business tax climate will climb up into the top 5 once all these tax cuts are implemented. I've also been a strong proponent for education reform, especially on Common Core, and we may have some questions on that. I've led the debate against the SAFE Act, and I'm co-sponsoring legislation to repeal it. I'm working on a number of welfare reforms. Obviously, we want to help those who need help when they need help, but welfare should never be a way of life. And so I have a number of reforms all designed to help people get out of welfare as fast as possible and to reduce that cost on us. So I look forward to this debate, and I appreciate being able to represent you in the past, and I look forward to your questions during this debate.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Well, I guess we'll move right on to the actual debate itself. If you're just joining us, I'm Doc Hamels, and you are watching Destination Chautauqua County, and we are holding a debate for New York State Assembly 150th District seat. Okay, gentlemen, we're going to start with Barrie, and here's the question on education. As you know, I host the show Chautauqua Sunrise, and recently Dr. Lauren Ormsby was my guest. And we were talking about Common Core, and there's various components on there, standards, curriculums, and so forth. Barrie, what is your opinion on the direction of New York State and how it should be heading in the educational field?
Outstanding question. We get that question a lot during the campaign, especially when it comes to Common Core. I think many of us agree, and I should say right from back that I've been opposed to Common Core from the first rollout over a year ago. That was a federal program that came to the states, and there are actually some states nationally that have resisted Common Core and chosen either to not be part of it or actually opted out when they found out the specifics about it. Common Core in philosophy, I think, makes a lot of sense because I know that there's manufacturers out there, companies, businesses, they want to see a better trained employee. They want to see the person coming to them as an employee or potential employee have the skills necessary to do the job for them. And so many times that they find that locally that doesn't happen at all. So philosophically, I really agree with the Common Core philosophies, but the rollout was totally wrong. It was abrupt. It came too quick. It relied mainly on people that were outside the education industry, nothing to do with local schools, and that's where I want to put my discussion into, is it's the local schools that know and how to best serve the communities in the state of New York. Every school district in the county or in Chautauqua County is different. They have different needs in Jamestown and Dunkirk versus in the rural areas in the county. It's up to the teachers that have the experience, in many cases 25, 30, 35, 40 years of experience in education, knowing all the educational philosophies and what needs to be done at the desk level, at the chair level, at the floor level in some cases for the New York elementary schools, to get the job done, to make sure kids are adequately trained. And along with that, I've been a person that's really pushed this last year, especially making sure that the local school districts have the necessary funding available to provide education in the classroom, making sure there's more people in the classroom to provide that education. Get those student-to-teacher ratios lower, like we all like to see when we try to go to the best colleges we ever want to look at. You want to see the best student-teacher ratios. You want to see the same thing in elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools.
Okay, thank you. And Andy, your turn.
I support high standards for our schools, of course, we all do. And I've been part of the solution addressing the Common Core issues. This year I co-sponsored legislation that made a number of positive changes in the Common Core rollout. As many of you may recall, when Common Core first came out, it had a tremendous emphasis on testing. We were testing all the kids in schools on curriculums they hadn't even seen, and the test scores were disastrous. They were then using those disastrous test scores to grade the effectiveness of teachers, which was grossly unfair because the teachers were being graded on stuff that they had never taught. The curriculum itself had gone through a major changeover, yet the teachers weren't given copies of the curriculum in advance, didn't have professional development time, so there are huge problems. So what we have done already is we've amended the Common Core rollout by statute to eliminate the use of tests, particularly for kids up to 8th grade. We've eliminated the use of the test for teacher performance evaluations, at least temporarily, while we work it out. And my caucus has also come up with a full range of other reforms. You can see them, by the way, on my Facebook account if you want to do the check off. But those reforms include suspending the Common Core mandatory rollout for up to a year or two while it's independently evaluated. Number 2, making sure that the curriculum is both age and developmentally appropriate, and there were problems with that. Number 3, going through and vetting all the test questions to make sure that the test questions are correct and appropriate. Number 4, bringing teachers' involvement directly into reviewing the curriculum and making sure it's appropriate. All these changes will improve the system and help us ensure that we're providing high-quality education to our kids in an appropriate manner.
Thank you. Okay, Barrie, you have an opportunity to comment or rebut.
I think it's pretty clear that Andy and I both agree on this Common Core that it was foolish to go into that to begin with. And he talked about a lot of great things in local districts. The testing is overburdensome. It makes no sense to educate your children just to get ready for the test. I mean, don't do that. You're there to educate for lifelong learning. That's the philosophy of education. One thing I've always been opposed to, especially with the Common Core, is the expense of it. We haven't talked much about the expense. I mean, a couple expenses in there. Supplies for number one. I mean, the common use of all the paper that has to be copied, whether you have a master or not, you have to figure that out, whether it's going onto a PDF on a website. That takes time for the teacher to do. I mean, it takes time out of their valuable schedule and then make the copies themselves. The other thing is costly in that there are so many school districts that are taking advantage of this, have the opportunity of trainers in the classroom, in the schools, people that are educated as trainers to help educate other people to be trainers. Even though there might not be a local tax burden, it is a tax burden from somewhere if they're getting grants to pay for that.
All right, and Andy.
The interesting aspect of Common Core was that the Common Core provisions were designed to prepare kids for college. And I like that objective. Obviously, I had a lot of problems with the rollout, and there were a lot of problems with its implementation. But we should also keep in mind that not everyone is the right person to go to college or should go to college. And increasingly, manufacturing is providing a lot of job opportunities in our county with good, solid wages and benefits. That's why I have co-sponsored an alternative career pathway for technical and manufacturing degree. This would be a diploma that you would get out of high school, all focused on trying to provide better skills and better education for those who are not going to college but are going into manufacturing and technical fields. And I hope that that bipartisan bill will gain traction next year.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to leave education and move on because we have a variety of topics we want to discuss today and hear your opinions on positions. The next question will take us to lakes in Chautauqua County. And Andy, you get first stab at this. There are many lakes in Chautauqua County, and within the county, the largest we all know is Lake Chautauqua. What is the Assemblyman's role in general now in helping to clean up our lake? What is your opinion on cleaning up the lakes and keeping them clean?
Great question. Last year, the bed tax came up for a reauthorization in the state legislature, and Senator Young and I worked together on a team. I'm in the Assembly, obviously, she's in the Senate, to rewrite the bed tax allocation provisions to ensure that a significant portion of those funds are directed specifically to helping all of our lakes. And over time, some of those bed tax funds had been diverted and were used for ditch projects and things like that. While those might be valuable, it lost the purpose of the bed tax. The bed tax was designed for two purposes. 3% of the bed tax went to market the county. The other 2% went to make sure that our county's assets were the best they could be. So that's the first thing we've done, and I will continue to support that. The second thing is that Senator Young and I were both able to get funding in the budget to deal specifically with invasive species. That's weeds. And for the last 3 years, we've been able to get a special allocation over to the Chautauqua Lake Association in the amount of $100,000 a year. That's been really helpful for them to maintain a full crew on the lake cutting and harvesting weeds. I would point out the next big challenge for us is to work with our county officials and with Congressman Reed on the federal level to get funding in place to help expand the sewer systems around Chautauqua County and to upgrade the sewer treatment plant. Because long term, we need to address nutrient loading, which means we need to deal with the sewer systems, we need to deal with the runoff that's coming in from our streams. And so we're going to be working together on major capital investments to upgrade those systems. And I know it's a high priority for our county executive, and our congressman has pledged his support as well.
Okay, thank you. And Barrie.
I would utilize my capabilities of just being a person that is a problem solver, trying to find out what the best opportunity and best way is to get the solutions done. Andy talked about the Chautauqua Lake Association, which does a phenomenal job. I've been down there, I've seen the equipment, I've seen it in use. They do a great job. But what can we do, not only Chautauqua Lake, but all the other lakes in the county for Chautauqua County? What can we do to prevent what's happening as far as the weed growth? And what that means is preventing the phosphorus and the nitrogens from going into the lake. Well, what do? do to prevent that stuff? Well, you got to figure out what's happening with all the different communities where there aren't sewer districts, where there aren't sewer systems, and that is a lot of people in Chautauqua County. It's a lot of property where people have their septic systems and the leach fields release the whatever is in the leach fields to relieve the system for the septic system. Of course, that has to go somewhere. And unfortunately, it goes into so many lakes. It goes into Chautauqua Lake, Castadia Lake, Barrie Lake, and where I'm from, Finley Lake. I'm very proud of the community that I'm in. And I know, just in speaking with people in the last several months in Finley Lake, they've got a lot of issues with the lake. Number one, there's a break wall that needs to be fixed. And I know a year and a half ago, a lot of people came to the village down there in the little hamlet downtown and took a look at what needs to be done. Well, we're sitting in a year and a half later, and they're still looking at grants and trying to find some money to help pay for that. Not to mention, it's probably going to be more than $16 to $20 million just for Finley Lake alone if they wanted to put in their own sewer system to circle the lake to get those phosphorates and nitrogens out of the system as far as the concern with the overflow of the leach beds. It's important that we take a look at the weed issues. I've been a proponent for many years. If there's a way we can figure out, in Chautauqua Lake especially, what we can do to get that out of there, to get the weeds out of there by dredging. Can we use the stuff that's out of there by dredging and as a saleable opportunity? Can we sell that as useful fertilizer we can for our local communities? We've got a lot of farming that goes on in Chautauqua County. Can we use that we get out of there as a dredge material in the community? Even sell it and make money.
Okay. Any rebut or comment?
Well, there's a lot of folks that are putting in an awful lot of time and effort to address lake management issues, particularly in Chautauqua Lake, but also in Lake Erie. On Lake Erie, we've had a dredging project that's successfully completed up in Barcelona Harbor. Next year, using both state and federal and local funds, we hope to complete dredging up in Dunkirk and also in Silver Creek. So those are important changes that will be moving forward, important improvements that will be moving forward next year. One other thing we want to keep in mind, we have a group of people with different interests that have been working hard on Chautauqua Lake, including the Chautauqua Lake Association, we have the Watershed Conservancy, and a number of others. And just recently, they've come together and formed an umbrella organization to coordinate all of their efforts and put together a unified grant application for additional funding. So I look forward to working with them, and I think we're going to see a lot more progress as they work together to accomplish that objective.
Thank you. Barrie, final word on that?
Lake management, I've been a big proponent of that because it sits everybody down at the same table, discuss issues. We're talking specifically about the lakes, but if you look at the watersheds in Chautauqua County, we've got 13 different watersheds in the county. That means where water collects, rainwater, snow water, whatever other kinds of water that come about, flows somewhere. To the north and the west, it flows to Lake Erie. To the south and east, flows south or towards the east. Everyone is affected by that water runoff wherever it goes. So there's Lake Erie is affected by what happens on the hill over top Chautauqua Lake. The northeast Pennsylvania area is affected what happens in my area, Finley Lake, by French Creek, because you get the French Creek, the water from French Creek to help provide water in the northeast Pennsylvania area. So we're affecting not only our own local citizens, we're affecting citizens from all over the region, people outside of our state and beyond, because the water eventually leads to the south and to the east. It eventually leads to the Gulf of Mexico.
All right. Give you a chance to hold your breath there and catch it. We're going to move on to question 3, and Barrie, you'll have first opportunity to comment on this. The topic is infrastructure. Now, if we all remember last winter, our county got beat up hard on the roads and bridges and so forth. And Chautauqua County is a rural area, as we all know, and that means we often have to drive long distances. How can we better protect and service our crumbling state roads and bridges, and how can you help local municipalities that may be struggling? I mean, everybody's budgets are tight right now to keep up with all these repairs that are extremely expensive. If you were the Assemblyman. Barrie?
Not too far ago, about the last 2 weeks, that State Comptroller Thomas DiNapoli came out with a report saying that taking a look at local municipalities and how they budget money for maintenance and repair of highways, bridges, roads, and that type of thing. He estimates that probably only about a third of the money that is used, actually, let me say that again, a third of what is actually needed is used in the local communities, saying that local communities should have more intention of providing more money into repairs, maintenance, bridges, making sure everything is safe for us to drive on. Of course, what does the local municipality do to do that? We are fortunate. This might be a once-in-a-lifetime, once-in-a-many-year thing this year. There's going to be, we think, I've heard, there's going to be a multi-billion-dollar surplus coming from the state government. A variety of money is coming in for two reasons. Number one is good economy statewide, even though the economy might not be good here in Chautauqua County. Statewide and on Wall Street up until this last 6-week period has been relatively good. So there's money coming in as far as revenue from stocks and bonds and also revenue from taxes, tax revenue. The other thing is that, we all know in 2008 there was a downturn in the economy based on the financial structure of Wall Street. They made some bad choices, some bad trades, some bad purchases. And those companies, those businesses are now being penalized and actually paying penalties to the state of New York that are totaling between $4 and $4.5 billion. I contend that that money could be used, part of that money can be used to provide money to local municipalities, to pay for bridge repairs, to pay for roads, to pay for maintenance on it. We know. We live in a community that it's rough winters, and we see the salt that happens all the time. And I know in my role as Meals on Wheels, director for Meals on Wheels, we know that there's two specific routes that we deliver that are more heavily salted than others because we see the results of the rust on our vans. So taking a look at making sure we reallocate the money that we have available to us in the budget, and that's a thing that we're all going to look at as far as an assembly is concerned.
Okay, thank you. And Andy?
Well, clearly, our infrastructure is a critical need and a critical importance to us here in Chautauqua County. I'm really pleased that last year I was able to work with a bipartisan group to increase CHIPS funding by $75 million. So it was about a 20% increase in CHIPS funding. And CHIPS funding is the Consolidated Highway Improvement Program, which helps all of our local municipalities with paving projects. Reflecting the really hard winter that we had last year, this year we added another $40 million to the CHIPS funds for pothole repair. And that's definitely a step in the right direction. I'm also a co-sponsor of the Bridge Reform Act. Now, many of us don't realize it, but when we buy our gasoline, part of the cost that we spend for gas goes into a dedicated highway and bridge fund. Unfortunately, over the years, that dedicated fund has been tapped for administrative costs at the State Department of Transportation. And so what the Bridge Reform Act does is takes out all those administrative costs, requires them to be put into the regular state operating budget where they belong, so that 100% of the funds that go into the Bridge Act, the Bridge Trust Fund, are used for that type of infrastructure. The other thing that I'm looking at is trying to change the way we fund the CHIPS program. Believe it or not, the CHIPS program has always been funded by borrowing. And all of us know you can't borrow every single year for an annual expense before you become bankrupt. And indeed, this year, the payments on the CHIPS debt actually exceed the amount of payments that were made to local municipalities. So I hope to use the windfall that we're getting from the state to change the structuring of the CHIPS program and to increase funding for our roads and bridges.
Thank you. Barrie?
I appreciate what Andy is saying. I mean, that's great opportunity that the Assembly has taken. I would want to take the next step, especially when it comes to emergencies. We know, living in the state of New York, we've had in the last 5 years some major natural disasters. Luckily for us, we haven't been able to we have been forced to undertake what has taken place in the eastern part of the state as far as more tornadoes in that area, from Binghamton to New York City. Definitely the hurricanes. When that happens, the bridges get torn out, roads get torn out, washed out. We know the work that happened here in the last 5 to 6 years with Silver Creek, with the flooding there. We want to make sure that not on top of restoring funding such as CHIPS and the funding that goes to local municipalities, that make sure that there's some sort of emergency fund in place, that if we need to, instead of going out to actually borrow millions or billions of dollars to fix repairs based on natural disasters, that there's a dedicated fund in service to do that. We know that companies that are electric companies, telephone companies, power companies, they have assets that they make sure they have ready to go across the state when needed. We should have the money needed in the state coffers to actually cover costs of anything to do with local disasters when it comes to maintaining and repairing bridges and roads.
And Andy, last word on that.
Well, the state does have a rainy day fund, specifically for emergencies. And we've been able to add funding to that rainy day fund for the last couple of years. And so we do have that fund available, and if necessary, we can tap into it. But I also think we need to focus on areas where we can improve operations, improve efficiency, and cut costs. And one area is the New York State Thruway. Right now, the New York State Thruway's administrative costs exceed those of the New York State Highway Department. Think of that. The administrative costs for one roadway are higher than the administrative costs for all the rest of the state-owned highways. So I support the proposal to bring the state thruway management into the state DOT, merge the two. I think we'd see millions and millions of dollars of savings, and those savings can then be used to be reinvested back where they need to be, upgrading our roads and bridges.
Thank you. If you're just joining us, once again, you are watching a debate with Andy Goodell and Barrie Yochim regarding the New York State Assembly 150th District seat. And I'm Doc Hamels, your host, and you have a question, you can contact us through these various means, or you can call us here at the studio at 753-5225. And if you have a question for the candidates, you can submit it, and it'll be given to me, and then I'll read it later on in the debate. Okay. We're going to put Andy up first on this question. This has probably been one of the hottest topics that we have heard when I was with the senior report and now with the Chautauqua Sunrise. You guessed it. Yeah. Hot topic. I'll shoot from the hip. There you go. This is regarding the SAFE Act. And out here in Chautauqua County, this has been a big deal. And we realize here at the studio that maybe it makes sense in large cities to have certain components of the law. But in rural Chautauqua County, we participate in gun sports and so on that you don't necessarily do in the larger cities. Do you support the SAFE Act as it stands? And I'm not sure where it stands because I know parts have been repealed. And how can you please the rural areas as well as the densely populated cities?
Great question. Obviously, the SAFE Act has been a really misguided effort to appear to do something that they weren't actually doing. And all of you know that I was a leading opponent of the SAFE Act. I actually debated the SAFE Act on the floor of the legislature. You can see my debate if you want to go on YouTube. Just go on YouTube, type in Andy Goodell, and you can see my debate. And I've been a strong opponent of the SAFE Act. Now, when the SAFE Act was first enacted, it actually made all the service revolvers that are used by all of our state police and sheriff's deputies, made them all illegal because it restricted the number of bullets that could be held in a gun to just 7 bullets. That apparently was on the premise that criminals are law-abiding and that criminals would likewise only put 7 bullets into their gun. Well, I had a real problem making all of our police officers felons or banning the use of their guns. That is an amendment that we were able to get through. But the most onerous aspects of the SAFE Act, which are the registration requirements for rifles, the inability for anyone who owns a rifle to give their rifle to a brother or sister or to their spouse or even for their kids to inherit it, still remains in place. And so I'm a co-sponsor of legislation to repeal that. We also need to keep our eye on the fact that there are a number of bills that come up also aimed at curbing our rights as Second Amendment rights. For example, micro-stamping, completely ineffective but very expensive change that would affect your ability to own a gun and buy ammunition. There's other ammunition restrictions. There's a bill to require $250,000 of insurance for anyone who owns a gun. Can you imagine that? You have to carry $250,000 worth of insurance just to have a hunting rifle. All those bills are all designed to attack our ability to have a hunting rifle or any other firearm, and I'm opposed to those.
Barrie, your turn.
Very plainly and clearly, I've signed the pledge to repeal the SAFE Act if I'm elected as Assemblyman. I think it's inherent that people in Albany understand what our feelings are with Chautauqua County from Chautauqua County residents. And it is my travels over these last several months, and actually more than a year when this all came about as far as coming out of Albany and the governor's office, You see bipartisan, multi-partisan effort, the signs on the side of the road, repeal the SAFE Act, bring back my constitutional right, my second right to the Constitution. There are a few good things in there in the SAFE Act. Just two things that I see. First responders are protected. There's more penalties for people that are first responders. We unfortunately had to hear the unfortunate news in the past year when Rochester firefighters were fired upon. That's sad. That's horribly sad. Of course, the provision for the safe storage of firearms. That's one thing that's in the law. That if I have a family member or someone that I know goes into another person's home that has firearms, I would expect that those firearms are locked up safe, that there be no interaction between a firearm and anybody that I'm related to. And that's it. Those are the two good things that I see out of it. There are so many bad things as far as when it comes to rifles are concerned. Even the federal law says that there can be two features on a rifle that would consider it an assault weapon. New York State, they just put it at one, whether it's a way you have a certain handle, a little hole there, hold your finger that way, the silencer at the end, all that type of thing. And that's not even in the federal legislation, but it was put in the state legislation. It wasn't thoroughly thought out. It came quickly. And the end result of it is our citizens aren't any safer. The people with the weapons have them legally. The people that don't have the legal authority to have weapons have them illegal, and they're going to have them anyway. And the end result of it also is it's hurting the economy because there have been companies that manufacture weapons, manufacture bullets, that have left the state of New York and taken those jobs and that tax money elsewhere. And that just wasn't forethought.
Andy?
Addressing the politics a little bit. The SAFE Act was sponsored by Governor Cuomo. It was actually introduced in the Assembly by Shelley Silver, the Democrat head of the Assembly. Not a single Democrat on the floor of the Assembly argued against it. Although, to be fair, there were a half a dozen Democrats that voted against it. But you can't argue against the SAFE Act when it's being proposed by your leader at the request of your governor. And if you do, there are serious repercussions. And so nobody on the Democrat side argued against it. The challenge is to get the amendments through the New York City dominated liberal Democrat bloc. And in New York City, gun violence is a very serious issue. And so part of our challenge is to distinguish between rifles, which do not account for murders in New York City, and handguns, so that we can move forward to amend the SAFE Act or repeal the SAFE Act restrictions as they relate to rifles. And that's part of the conversation we have to have moving forward.
Barry, last word on the SAFE Act.
My feeling, and I've said this from the start, even before I got into the specifics of studying the SAFE Act and how wrong it is, people talked about the reason for people having guns, and it's you have the constitutional right to, at least outside of New York State, to have the guns. But the problem is, and it's a problem that festers into providing the guns, it's a mental health issue. If we have people with mental health issues and problems having the guns, that's where it all starts. I mean, pour more money into helping people with mental health problems. I mean, I feel for people that happen in Columbine, in Aurora, Colorado, in Connecticut. I feel strongly for that. But those people have mental health problems. Fix those problems, and you won't have to worry about taking away guns from law-abiding citizens.
All right, thank you. Once again, if you have a question that you'd like to ask our candidates, you can call it in, Twitter it, text us, however you want to, because we will be coming to a point where we won't be able to take any of your questions, but there still is an opportunity. Okay, the next topic is fracking. Of all the things that I followed in the newspaper, this to me is probably one of the more confusing ones, because depending on who you're listening to, they have a tendency to bring you to their way of thinking, and then you listen to the other person, and then you're swayed the other way. So, fracking or hydraulic fracturing, in its current incarnation has been considered to be detrimental to the environment. What do you see as the future of fracking in New York State, and is it an answer possibly to unemployment? And we will begin with Barry.
Well, I know there's 100-some municipalities statewide that have said that they are totally against fracking. They want to make sure anything that happens, that the ban on fracking still exists. I'm totally for that. I'm for making sure that fracking does not occur in New York State, especially in Chautauqua County. We have so many valuable watersheds, like we talked about, 13 watersheds in the county, fitting into a number, half dozen lakes and different streams, and water goes everywhere, as we know, as water flows. I am opposed to it because of all the opportunities we have as far as using fresh water in our community. We know that Chautauqua County has some of the freshest water in the state, and I want to make sure that's maintained. In the Jamestown, West Ellicott area, we get our money or get our water from central parts of the county where the Casadega aquifers are tapped and water is pumped to our area. I know growing up in the Finley Lake area that my parents have a well that they still have today. Where I happen to live in that area, it's in a valley of Finley Lake. I know that there are hills that surround us that are 300 feet in elevation compared to where I grew up in the household that I grew up in. That water flows downhill. That water goes eventually into the aquifer, and we use that water for safe drinking water. I want to make sure that for generations from this point forward, that all generations have the fresh water that I grew up with, that we all should grow up with. I don't think making sure that companies coming in causing problems not only on the surface of the ground, and when you're talking about runoff when it rains and snows, that's going to run off somewhere if they're polluting our community. They're talking about as far as fracking, putting toxins into the water or into the ground to bring the water out and bring the gas and the oil out. Don't put poisons in. Why would you want to put a poison in the ground? We've already been told for generations, don't ever dump your gas, don't dump your used kerosene, don't dump your used antifreeze. You're going to poison the water. Why would we purposely do that now to poison our fresh water?
Andy?
I believe we can safely frack, safely develop natural gas resources in New York State. The reason I know that we can is because we have been fracking wells in Chautauqua County for over 60 years. We've had over 5,000 wells drilled in Chautauqua County. There are about 3,500 wells currently operating. Those wells have all been fracked, sometimes more than once. 25 years ago, the county health department hired a water resource specialist just to make sure that we didn't have any problem with groundwater pollution resulting from fracking. And I'm not aware of a single instance where there's been a demonstrated contamination of groundwater by fracking. It's not just me, though. A recent report in 2013 by the New York State Geological Society, they reported, and I quote, "The New York State DEC and regulatory agencies in other states all say they are not aware of any case where hydraulic fracturing has contaminated groundwater." And this is not just a Republican or a Democrat position. The head of the U.S. EPA, appointed by Obama, said, quote, "I am not aware of any proven case where the fracking process itself has affected water." Can we take natural gas extraction and do it in an environmentally responsible manner? Answer, absolutely. What's it mean to us in the state? There's an estimated $1 billion a year in revenue that we're not getting because we're not allowing fracking to go forward. An additional 20,000 to 30,000 jobs for New York State that would be associated with this. And of course, we need that natural gas for projects like the NRG repowering project in Dunkirk. So I support environmentally responsible hydrofracking and natural gas development.
Okay, on the rebuttal, I just want to add a note here. According to my notes here, the fracking that we're talking about is not the old style, but perhaps horizontal hydraulic fracturing. I don't know if that makes any difference. Barry, back to you.
It does make a difference. I'd love whoever responded to that or sent that to you or whatever you looked up, because that's my response. Andy talked about that fracking has been going on for years. We know that there's been gas and oil exploration in Chautauqua County for years and years, for decades, for generations. I was able to be a student at Chautauqua Central, or Clymer Central School in Chautauqua County. When they drilled a well there, they helped benefit the school there, and they've been reaping savings since that time. The drilling that Andy's talking about that's been going on for generations is through sandstone. That's vertical drilling. Sandstone is less porous, which means there's not as much oil and gas in there, but it's easier to get through. It's more permeable. You can get through that with regular drilling. You're not doing as much. You're not entering or putting as much stuff into the ground to drive out the oil and the gas. Difference is that's vertical. We're talking about hydrofracking, where it's a whole different thing. We're talking horizontal. That means when they drill down, then they drill at a 90-degree angle. to take advantage of more porous slate and shale. That means it's easy to get through. It's not easy to get through. They've got good oil and gas in there, but it's harder to get through. That's why they need to put all the pressure with all the water and poisons, all that, to force out the gas and the oil. It's harder to get through. That's why they need to put so much pressure in to do that. And that's what's wrong, and that's what's going to causing poisons in the water table and also runoff on top of the land.
Andy, last word on that one.
Sure. It's exactly the same process, whether it's what the shallow wells that we have here in Chautauqua County, which run, the fracking is typically 2,500 to 5,000 feet, or whether you're talking about horizontal fracking. It is exactly the same process for the same reasons, using the same type of ingredients. The difference is that the fracking here in Chautauqua County occurs closer to the groundwater because our wells are shallower. If you're talking about horizontal drilling, those lines, the horizontal lines, are typically 1.5 miles to 2 miles below the surface. And they have very sensitive seismographic instruments that measure the extent of the fracking. They show that all the fracking that occurs 2 miles below only extend a relatively short distance from the pipe. None of them come anywhere close to the groundwater. Now, there are other environmental issues that have to be addressed. Of course, you have to be able to pump the water out, which they do. New York regulations require that all that water be treated on-site in a closed-loop system and either recycled or reclaimed. Those environmental standards have to be in place. But there are still no demonstrated pollution occurring from either our type of well, which is short and close to the groundwater, or the horizontal fracking that occurs in the high-volume Marcellus shale.
I have a feeling we could talk about this one for quite a while. As I say, to me, it goes back and forth, back and forth. Okay, let's go on now, folks, to topic 6. And I'll try to frame this. It's a bit general, but I'll do the best I can. As Assemblyman, how do you support local job creation through the state budgeting process? For instance, tax incentives, tax breaks, pilots, business stimulus, startups, and so forth. But from your Assemblyman position, and we will start with Andy this time.
Great question. It's been a top...
It's not mine.
Whoever came up with it, it's a great question, and it really focuses on what a lot of my top priorities have been. And so when you look at New York State, you realize that our tax burden is higher than almost any other state in the nation. And that tax burden is on the state level and on the local level. And so what you need to do is systematically look at how New York State increases the cost of doing business and then systematically work to reduce those costs. So let me walk through some of the things we're looking at and what we've done. First, we've reduced the manufacturing taxes to the lowest level since 1968. That's important. Second, we've given manufacturing a property tax credit. This is a credit that reduces their total tax bill by giving them a credit on their state tax to reflect what they're paying in property tax. Third, there's a tax on your utilities. This is your natural gas or your electric. And we are phasing out that tax. To give you an idea, when fully phased out, residents in the city of Jamestown will save $500,000. And all of you will save substantially on your utilities. But that brings our utility costs more in line with the national average. We're doing a number of things to help our agricultural industry. We've capped the amount of assessment change that can occur for a farm to reduce any increases in property taxes. We've capped property taxes, as you know, which has put a real brake on local property taxes. To help our local governments, we've increased state aid, we've increased highway aid, we've capped the county's Medicaid cost increases. That saves $775,000 a year on a cumulative basis. And so we're working both to reduce the state taxes and reduce the local taxes to help make New York State more competitive.
Thank you. Barrie?
Well, I prefer a great response from Andy. I've always been one to, it takes a combination of things sometimes to get the job done. We've heard a lot about the Buffalo Billion, the money that's come from Albany to the Buffalo Erie County area. The best that I've seen, it's stopping at the Erie County, Chautauqua County line. Nothing's come our way. I would do it as Assemblyman is going through, working with the governor's office, working with the leaders in the legislature, figuring out how we can get more of that money to come to Chautauqua County. Whether it's job programs, specific jobs, like putting businesses in our entity in Chautauqua County, more money to the Chamber of Commerce, helping provide provisions there, helping training. I know they've got some great training opportunities at the Chamber of Commerce and through the Manufacturers Association. And I want to be one for all. I want to be one for all when it comes to new businesses starting up. They're thinking about it. The existing businesses. I've heard more so in this last year about businesses in the community that are small, mom and pop businesses. Some they want to grow. Some that haven't been able to grow because they don't have the opportunities of hiring employees or they don't have the assets out there to sell their products. They want to see more service as far as a business that they've already been in for many years, decades. They're not getting listened to by Albany and the state. I would want to listen to them. I've had jokes of saying, hey, I want to be Barrie Yochim. I'm from the government. I'm here to help you. I would want to be that go-between. And I'm very fortunate and happy that I've been pushing for making sure middle-class tax cuts. I'm in a middle class. I'm from a middle-class family. I want to make sure that the money that comes to my community, my family, families like mine, are being well spent. And what that means is I get more money, I spend it more in the community, providing jobs at those businesses, those grocery stores, all of that. That helps generate money in the economy and tax money for the community.
Thank you, Barry. Andy, rebuttal?
During the last 4 years I've been Assemblyman, we have capped any growth in state spending on the state operations to less than 2%. And that fiscal discipline has enabled us to start cutting all these taxes, including the middle class tax rate, which was cut to the lowest level in 50 years. But now we need to also look at some of the cost drivers, the state mandates. I'm a co-sponsor of a comprehensive mandate relief bill, for example, that would dramatically reduce the costs of business and your local government in the state of New York. We need to look at reducing the cost of workers' comp, a difficult and complex issue, but one that's critical for our future. I was very pleased that a few years ago, the governor took legislation that I sponsored that reformed unemployment insurance and included it in his budget, and that became law to improve and reform our unemployment program. We need to remember that even though the Buffalo Billion talked about Buffalo, the state played a key role in the NRG project, which is the largest economic development project in the history of our county, and has also provided critical funding to keep Lakeshore open and help a number of other companies. And I will continue to fight for all of those local employers.
Barry, rebuttal to that.
I appreciate what's been done on a statewide level to cut the business taxes. As an employer for Meals on Wheels, I've seen some of the taxes that we see and the costs that we see go up in the last several years, which is workers' compensation, unfortunately. I would want to take a look at not only the costs that workers' compensation are carried over to the businesses, industries, nonprofits in my case, but there hasn't been a continuation of increasing those benefits that the employee receives for being on workers' compensation. Those have been stable for many years. I want to see why did my costs go up and why didn't the people that get the money get more money out of that, definitely. And of course the environment is a huge thing. I've been a proponent of making sure not only in the transition from coal to the natural gas up at the NRG, and the same thing in the Jamestown Board of Public Utilities, transitioning from coal to natural gas there, that we take advantage of all opportunities, which is a good way to start new businesses in Chautauqua County when it comes to solar power, wind power, water power in case of taking advantage of the elevations of where our lakes sit in the county and maybe taking advantage of some gravity and pumping some pumps that way.
Well, thank you. So far, we're doing quite well. We're staying on time, and I'm doing my job. Okay. Gentlemen, we've covered the 6 topics that you received prior to the debate, and now we have what we would consider our submitted questions that came in or were created before the debate. And the first topic that we're going to consider here is the matter of casinos. Okay? And if you're watching the show right now, we're live. It's October 18th, and we're having a live debate with Barrie Yochim and Andy Goodell for the 150th District New York State Assembly seat, and we're going through a variety of questions, and this one is on casinos. The purpose of the state is to service and help people in everyday life. What type of message does New York State send by allowing more casinos? What about people who are addicted to gambling? How does an increase in casinos help these people? And Barrie, you got first dibs on that.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that, John. And thank you for that new topic for us. It's nice to be on our toes.
Refreshing.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, we do as best we can for studying. I've been a long proponent in favor of casinos. The reason being is people go to casinos and spend money. Not only services, food, hotel accommodations. And those are jobs that we can provide based on casinos. We've seen that in not too far distant areas such as Salamanca, Erie, Niagara Falls, Buffalo area. But my concern is the saturation point, and that's a huge concern. We've heard in the last 3 weeks, specifically in Atlantic City, New Jersey, that they have had to close casinos, let valuable jobs and valuable employees go because people are not going to Atlantic City anymore. They go into the little territorial casinos. So I want to take a look at, is Chautauqua County ready for a casino? We're smack dab in the middle. We've got that triangle, Niagara Falls and Buffalo, Salamanca, Erie. Right in the middle. We know people that are in Chautauqua County are leaving our county to go to those casinos in those areas. Take a look at whether we can support one here locally. We've got state land that we could do that on, close to the lake. We could build one there. Second, I want to take a look at also the end result of that. And we have such great programs locally through the Chautauqua Alcoholism and Substance Abuse Council. I would say there should be a dedicated percent, maybe as high as 25 or 30% of the proceeds that came in from those casinos should go to gambling cessation programs, such as the Alcoholism Council. That have done such a great job these last 5 to 10 years of trying to get people off of going to, have the habit of going to casinos and unfortunately losing money in that case. I've been to casinos. I know where my stop limit is. A lot of people don't. That's why we need the services in the community to help provide those stop limits to individuals that would unfortunately get out of hand with their casinos, with their casino spending.
Know your limit.
Yeah.
And Andy?
I'm not a big fan of casinos because casinos don't actually produce anything. They suck money out of the local community. The local community that comes in there often is characterized by people who can least afford to spend the money. So when you look at the demographics, you typically see that a disproportionate number of people who cannot afford really to just spend their money or burn their money are at casinos. The amount of money that people actually win at casinos is typically less than 10%. That means 90% of all that money that's coming in is used up by the casino organization and the profits that they generate for their management and staff and things of that nature. So I'm not a big proponent of it. It's even more problematic as the number of casinos around New York State has proliferated. And so what happens is, the original argument was, well, all those New Yorkers who are going into Pennsylvania or New Jersey to play at the casinos, they ought to stay at home and play here. But what we're finding is there aren't that many of them, and we're not drawing new people from outside of New York State, bringing new money into New York State. So all the studies that I've seen show that casinos do not have a strong positive economic impact on a community. For every job that's created in a casino, all of that money came out of the local community, which means that's money that isn't being used at the hardware store or to rebuild your house or for a new car or anything else that creates other jobs. It's not creating new jobs. It's just redistributing wealth. As far as Chautauqua County ever benefiting from a casino, that's not going to happen because as part of the casino compact, we have a treaty with the Senecas that bans any casino in this part of the state other than what's already in Salamanca. So I'm not a big fan of casinos.
Barrie, rebuttal.
When it comes to jobs are concerned, I think construction jobs for a new casino, speaking with the compact, if there is a way to overcome that, you would have those construction jobs, local construction industries, local unionized employees would be building those entities. as far as people using it, we still have off-track betting here. We still have lotteries. We still have bingo. We're already reutilizing funds of local community citizens are being reallocated within that format as well. So I'm just wondering where the stoppage would happen. We're going to stop bingo, we're going to stop lottery, we're going to stop off-track betting. It's local people that spend the dollars in that too. And I'm just wondering if Mr. Goodell is going to step to that next step and stop that stuff as well.
Ooh, okay. The challenge.
Well, first of all, I believe that when you make a treaty with the Indians, and you include that in the law, and you sign written agreements, you need to honor your treaties. And we have a treaty with the Seneca Nation that says there won't be any casinos outside of their territory in Chautauqua County, and I would honor that treaty just as I think we should honor all laws. Second, I think there's a huge difference between casino gambling in a different county outside of our area that takes money out of our area, and the bingo games that are run by local charities right here in Chautauqua County, where 100% of the money stays in Chautauqua County and helps the fire department or the church or whoever is running the bingo program. There's a huge difference. Granted, we have off-track betting. It's very small in Chautauqua County, and to be honest with you, I think it's on its last legs, and I think we'll have less of that as we go forward. So I think we should focus our efforts on long-term job development, like manufacturing, like our basic tourism, where we get money from outside Chautauqua County coming in and helping our economy grow rather than just taking money out of our economy.
Thank you. All right. Sparks were flying that time. Next question. The United States as a whole is ranked 28th among the world in terms of internet speeds. Slower internet speeds often make businesses shy away from coming, for instance, to New York State. As Assemblyman, how could you help increase internet speeds, infrastructure, and technology, especially to the rural areas? And we start this time with Andy.
Well, the state has supported broadband internet access and increasing broadband internet access. We also have a number of tax programs designed to improve technology, and I think we're going to continue to move in that direction. Obviously, in New York City, which is a financial capital of the world, their internet speeds are as fast as you can get anywhere because they depend on it. As you become more and more rural, the cost benefit ratio for a private company providing internet access starts to drop. We're starting to see technology that makes it much faster and much easier to get direct access to the internet through your phone lines, or not through your phone lines, but directly to a satellite, like MiFi. And I expect that type of technology will continue to grow. So New York State continues to support technological advancement, increasing broadband access. We did put a fiber optic network around Chautauqua Lake down to Jamestown. That's helping. But ultimately, the most rural sections of our county, they're going to be relying on the expansion of the 4G network and direct access through the internet connectors and the satellite service rather than through hard lines.
All right. Thank you. And Barrie?
Boy, I agree everything with what Andy said, definitely. We live in a very rural area, and when it comes to our phone service, I mean, sometimes it's marginal. I mean, we're great with local phone companies. We've got some state-of-the-art companies here in our county, Windstream, NetSync, DFT, North County, all that stuff, that do great work. And I think we should support them and supplant them, making sure that they have the technology available. Maybe it's a grant system, maybe it's a direct funding system from the state government to help make sure that they can expand services into not only rural areas, but into underutilized urban areas, because I know that happens as well. My problem with internet speeds is the variation. Depending on where you go in the county, you'll see low speed, high speed, middle speed. Then it happens even in the same phone line. You might have a different speed 2 hours later on the same phone line, which is the problem. So I think that's a technological problem that maybe the state can help out with. And I carry that into the satellite coverage. You know, we were very rural, and you can't run phone lines or electric lines to a lot of places in the county, taking advantage of the satellite systems that some of our national providers have provided as far as television is concerned. They now have the internet link with that. I would carry that also in the cell phones. I've been a huge proponent of making sure that no matter what company has been in Chautauqua County providing cell phone service, they've got to carry out on their promises. There's a multitude number of companies that provide cell phone services in the county, but you talk to people, how's yours, how's this, how's that, and they all have different answers. I would say you got to make sure to stabilize the cell phone technology in the county as well, not only for emergency purposes, but for what I consider luxury purposes for the general homeowner. I know for a fact, Meals on Wheels, we use cell phones for a particular carrier that we're not happy with because we won't get coverage all the way across the county. Yet my driver who has his own personal cell phone can get through crystal clear anywhere in the county. What's wrong with that? We need to fix that.
And that's the question. And Andy, back to you.
Well, you know, notwithstanding the color of my hair,
Right.
you know, this new technology is relatively new. I remember when I was county executive, and I had one of the very first, what they called a cell phone.
Big one.
It was a big one, that's right. And, you know, it came in almost like a backpack.
Yep.
And it was a radio telephone. It was actually a party line, by the way, so I had to be careful what I was discussing. We've come a long ways. The technology advancements are continuing to explode. On the hardline side, we're seeing Windstream and DFT and others continually upgrade their switching equipment. That's a slow process, as switching equipment is expensive, and they're moving forward, though, on that level. I still can do a countdown right down to probably within a second of when I'm going to lose cell coverage when I go over Airport Hill. There are still gaps of that type that are in our county. The state is working hard to encourage it with tax credits and other financial programs, but we have a ways to go.
Barry, can you follow up on
I can follow. And it's a balancing act when you're working with the entities such as the Windstream, such as DFT and NetSync, because they're good taxpayers in the county too. I mean, they pay good taxes, they pay their employees, and the employees pay taxes as well. Communicating the situations with those is what I would like to do. We know that on a national standpoint, a lot of phone companies are getting away from the person at home. They're thinking that maybe they're going to lose or they're going to leave the landline service that these companies provide, and we'll know that they'll leave, so let them leave and we'll just concentrate on the businesses. I want to make sure that, especially in the rural areas, if we have the landline capabilities to provide services in the communities, that those phone companies don't drop them just because it's easy to drop them. They want to concentrate on businesses, even though concentrating on businesses is great because it provides them services as far as the business is concerned. Don't drop the mother and father, grandmother that has the services, and don't drop the maintenance and repair of those lines, and making sure that everybody gets covered with their service.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, take a breather here. I'm Doc Hamels. You've been watching the debates with Andy Goodell and Barrie Yochim. And we have two more questions coming up that have been submitted prior to the show, and I believe you don't know what they are, right? You don't even know what the topics are.
We don't know what they are. No.
I didn't know them practically until I got here, so don't shoot the messenger. All right, so the next question is an interesting one, and I hadn't thought of this before. It's regarding term limits, and this would be in-office term limits. Many local and state officials do not have term limits, but positions such as the presidents do. How do you feel on term limits in general and on the state level? For instance, I know some assemblymen that have been assemblymen since I was in grammar school, I think, and senators and so forth.
That's not me.
Not you. You're not there yet. No. All right. But Barrie, we'll start out with you, and any thoughts about term limits?
Well, term limits is another balancing act. You got to balance someone doing a great and phenomenal job, whether it's assemblyman, mayor, county executive, any of that, versus the need for getting new ideas and new personnel, new people in there. Having not thought about term limits, I would say I tend to be probably against term limits. I would want to make sure that you don't take away someone from a position if they've been chosen and proven to do a good job, plus also taking away the rights of the citizens to vote for that person every 2 years, every 4 years, every year, as the case may be, and depending on which office it is. So I wouldn't want to take that right away from the individuals. If they want to vote for me, they have the opportunity to vote for me every year. If they want to vote for Andy every year, they have the opportunity. I wouldn't want them not to have that opportunity just because of term limits. There are so many opportunities for people to do good, and sometimes it takes a while to get their do good stuff done. I mean, literally, it takes years sometimes to get the money they need for to provide services around the Chautauqua Lake, for providing a sewer service, or putting one around the Finley Lake area, like I talked about earlier today. Sometimes it's a prolonged approach, and sometimes you're learning on the job in many cases. I'd say I'm against term limits.
Okay, Andy.
Yeah, I'm also against term limits. It's an interesting question because right now, by the way, convicted felons cannot run for office. And so when you implement term limits, you make an interesting statement that only convicted felons and those who have experience in office would be precluded from running for office. Every 2 years, I'm up for re-election. And so if you don't think I'm doing a good job, you have that opportunity every 2 years to elect somebody else. You have that opportunity to change your leadership. And I think it's very valuable that you get experience on a job. The more you've been there, the more you understand how the system operates. So I'm opposed to those term limits. I would point out, though, that I do support term limits for upper leadership positions. We have a situation in the Assembly where the Speaker of the Assembly has been there for over 20 years. And so I think there ought to be a reasonable term limit on those types of positions. They can still serve and represent the people who elected them, but we get some turnover in the top leadership positions.
Thank you, Andy. Barrie?
Nothing really to rebut other than we both agree with term limits. I look up to somebody that has been a long-term person in this community, of course, is Bill Parment. He served in the Assembly very capably representing Chautauqua County, and I can only hope to replicate part of what he's done to help benefit our community. If in some way I'm able to be elected as a Democrat like he was elected, definitely. But people were given the opportunity to vote for him every time, and luckily he gained a majority of the vote. That just gives us all an opportunity to provide for what we do. We're voters here, we're electors, we can elect who we want. And fortunately for them, they were able to vote for him. In the last 2 years, they were able to vote for Andy, and the people have given that opportunity too. And I hope they give me that opportunity this year.
Well, let's see what Andy has to say about Andy, what, you have any comment on that? You've got last word.
Well, I appreciate being able to represent the residents of Chautauqua County for the last 4 years, and I hope to continue to do so for the next 2 years. And it takes time sometimes to get your legislative agenda through. I've been working very hard on a comprehensive welfare reform agenda. And in order to get the bipartisan support that I have to get, in order to get that through the Assembly, I have to work one-on-one with my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to convince them that it makes sense for their communities if we reform welfare so that people can get out of welfare better. And that some of the things that we try to do in the welfare area to just increase benefits actually traps people. So it takes time for people to be introduced to a new idea and a new approach, a new way of doing things. It takes a little bit of time for them to think it's actually their idea. And then once they conclude that it's their idea and it's a good idea, then we can make those changes. So I'm not in favor of term limits.
Okay, we're down to the last question. Yeah, I see your point. This last question is probably the most difficult question I'll be posing, because if you look out on Facebook, you watch TV and so forth, I think right now the United States is moving right and left and up and down and so forth. And here's the question, okay? And we're going to start with Andy's going to be the first one on this one. Here's the question. From your vantage point, okay, from where you see things, is New York State moving away from the principles of democracy and more towards socialism?
There is a continuous pressure in the New York State Assembly to move more towards socialism. It doesn't come from upstate. It doesn't come from the upstate Republicans or the upstate Democrats. It comes from the New York City bloc. New York City is the only major city in the entire nation where rents are controlled by government for millions of residents. New York City always is pushing for more welfare benefits, more social control of health care. New York City is the ones that are pushing for the complete socialization of health care. New York City is the home of the Working Families Party, which is an ultra-liberal party out of New York City. And that party, for example, opposes tax cuts, supports the SAFE Act, wants government to pay college tuition for illegal immigrants. That's your tax dollars helping illegal immigrants. Is pushing for college degree for inmates. So when you go to prison, you could get a college degree at taxpayer expense. All those envision a much bigger role for government that is moving us in a socialist direction. And unfortunately, we do have some moderate Democrats from upstate. We are constantly battling that effort, constantly saying people should have personal responsibility. We need everybody to be engaged in employment, not just the taxpayers who are supporting those who aren't. That we need to focus on helping our citizens advance before we focus on helping people who are here illegally or who are violating our laws get college degrees. So you can see that pressure all the time. I am hopeful that I can be part of the bulwark that keeps us from becoming more socialist in New York State.
And Barrie.
This is a tough question. I've never really considered that until you asked that question about democracy versus socialism. I'm proud that we live in New York State, in Chautauqua County, and live in the United States of America, which we consider the ultimate democracy worldwide. I'm also proud, not only being a Democrat-endorsed candidate for this seat, I'm also the Working Families Party-endorsed candidate. And it hurts me that being that endorsed candidate, I'm representing my community as a Working Families Party member. I'm a working family. I came from a working family. Having the ability to work as a democracy doesn't mean that I have to follow everything that a party stands for. Andy says that the Working Families Party supports the SAFE Act. I've already said today I don't support the SAFE Act. Because we're in a democratic entity as New York State and Chautauqua County, United States of America, I can make that determination. I can tell you today that I don't support the SAFE Act for a variety of reasons. Working Families Party does support the DREAM Act. What that is providing money and opportunity for individuals who are already in the school system. I apologize for dropping that. Already in the school system, they are residents of our county that for no reason for their own, that their parents decided to settle here. Whether they're migrant workers or they're workers in small businesses, are able to provide services under the table with very little pay. The kids are here, they're in school. They're being educated by our school teachers. They're here. We're not going out to solicit people from outside the state, outside the country, to come to New York State to take advantage of money to get them into college. Kids are here. They're treated as a student like any other student in the classroom. They are having the opportunities to apply to go to colleges, to get scholarships, to get benefits that way. Not only does that is a self-worth for their family, but also that saves money in the long run because those students become more than likely become residents of our state and our county and our federal government, United States citizens, I want to say it in a better way, but also they become better paying taxpayers later on. The taxes they pay because of the jobs they achieve for going to college based on the DREAM Act will more than cover the money that costs them to go to school and get to the college.
Andy, this is your last rebuttal.
I don't support raising your taxes to give tuition assistance to illegal immigrants who aren't in our state lawfully. And when you look at the so-called DREAM Act, what you realize is the amount of tuition assistance that they would get is based on the reported income from their parents. But since their parents are in the United States illegally, they don't report any income. They cannot get a Social Security number, which means that their parents, unlike you and I, their parents aren't paying any state income taxes. And because they're not paying any state income taxes and not reporting any income, their illegal children would get the maximum amount of tuition assistance. So think about that. You work hard, you pay taxes. Because you work hard, the tuition assistance that's available to your children would be less than those who work under the table, who are here illegally, who don't pay any New York State income taxes. I think that's fundamentally wrong. Now, if you are a citizen of a different country, and you're here for whatever reason, and you are educated at our expense in our high schools, for example, or you come in on a student visa, at the end of your stay, you should go back to your home country and help them develop. Take your knowledge and help them. That's part of our mission as a nation, to show compassion and help to others, not raise our taxes so that they can stay here without paying any taxes themselves.
Barrie, you have last word on this matter.
You could tell the compassion in Andy's voice, and I appreciate that very much. But my compassion is what I've already said, that these kids are here, their families are trying to find a better life. The kids are here. They're in the school system. It's a federal dealing if you deal with why the parents are here. I mean, why they're not citizens, why they're not residents of our area, why they're not tax-paying residents. That's a federal deal. Okay, we're talking about the kids that are here. That actually state money goes to local districts to help pay for that, for the education. Again, I said the money you gain by those students getting a better paying job because they went to college, because they were able to get a college degree, more than covers the cost of that. And it's been proven in 10 states across the country, there's been no correlation between the ability of people to pay for the college that they go to and not being able to get a job later on. I mean, there's been no drawback. Those states have not decided to come back away from something similar to the DREAM Act at all. They have kept it, definitely. And the last result is there's provision in the legislation to come up with a state foundation to pay for those services, not coming out of taxpayer money.
Thank you. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure working with you today. Ladies and gentlemen, we're wrapping things up here with the 150th District New York State Assembly seat debate with Barrie Yochim and Andy Goodell. Gentlemen, we're going to begin with Andy, and he'll have his last words for 3 minutes, and then we'll wrap it up with Barrie. So, Andy, you've got 3 uninterrupted minutes.
Well, great. Again, I want to express my appreciation to all of you who have supported me in the past. For those who haven't yet supported me, you'll have an opportunity in a couple weeks, and I hope you'll consider that as well. All of us consider ourselves lucky if we can pursue something that is a passion of ours. And fortunately for me, my passion has been to try to improve New York State, to try to improve our economy, to try to cut our taxes, to try to strengthen our educational program and bring more educational aid back here, to implement welfare reform so that welfare is just a temporary service, not a permanent way of life, to repeal the SAFE Act and honor our Second Amendment rights, to hold the tide against socialism here in New York State, to try to move our state and our county forward into a better future. That's my passion. And I am so fortunate and so thankful that you have given me the opportunity to pursue my passion. And I'm thankful for my wife, who puts up with these discussions at the dinner table as I discuss things like whether or not we should give a benefit to illegal immigrants that nobody else gets, or whether or not we should require that they follow the rules of the law before they come to the United States, rather than give them benefits afterwards. But I am so thankful for the support my wife has given me and for the opportunity to run. If I am reelected, I promise you I will focus on trying to strengthen the economy of Chautauqua County so we have a better future here. I am so excited to be part of a team that works so closely together in trying to accomplish that objective, whether it's a county executive or Senator Kathy Young, who's a great team player up in Albany and here at home, or Congressman Tom Reed. All of us are focusing on improving the economy, improving Chautauqua County, and moving us forward. And so I appreciate the opportunity to work for you and reflecting my commitment to trying to improve the economy and my voting record. This year, 2012, I was the highest ranked assemblyman throughout the entire state by the New York State Business Council. And of course, I've received their endorsement. I've also received the endorsement of the National Federation of Independent Businesses, a nonpartisan organization that supports and promotes small businesses. And I've been endorsed by Unshackle New York for my efforts to reduce state mandates. And I've been endorsed by the Associated Builders and Contractors, and I've also been endorsed by SEIU, one of the largest unions in the state, for my efforts helping Brooks and Lakeshore employees. So I hope you endorse me as well and give me your support on Election Day.
Thank you, Andy. Barry, your opportunity to wrap things up for 3
I get
minutes.
the final word? All right, cool. Thank you for this great opportunity, to the great people watching in and sending the questions, and very challenging questions, which was nice because you want to keep us on our toes, so I appreciate that as much. Andy's been in the job for 4 years, county executive before that. He's had that opportunity to excel and do things for the community. I have that same opportunity now as an assembly candidate to do the same if you vote for me in 2 weeks, so please vote for me if you have that opportunity. I've been able to say, and you might sense my feeling about the community. I'm in the community. I've been about the community for 20-some years, whether it's working at United Way, working in the community, working in the households, working with the nonprofit organizations, working with the businesses, getting them to donate to the cause for United Way, to making sure our community is a better place to live for all of us. Definitely the last 15 years working through Meals on Wheels and having the great opportunity to serve 2 million meals in that time, which is the most that's been served in that length of time in any time in our history in the 45 years of Meals on Wheels at Jamestown and Central Chautauqua County. I'm glad to be a part of that. I'm glad to be part of a solution, not always a problem, because there are many times that things come across our desk, whether from governments or funders or even people paying off the street, that the money is a problem and is tight sometimes, and we still have to feed people. We still provide services in the community, and luckily under my tutelage and my benefit and leadership at Meals on Wheels, we'll be able to make that work. And I continue to do that, at least as far as I can tell you what I can do as Assemblyman. I will continue that passion, is making sure that things in the community work, people get the services they need that should be provided to them, whether it's a state, county, municipality. I will fight for that. I fought for that for 20 years. I've been proud that in Meals on Wheels, we've never had to turn anybody away who's over age 60 from getting Meals on Wheels in our county. And I've been proud we've been able to fulfill the promise that many counties in New York State haven't been able to do, but in Chautauqua County I've been able to help out fulfilling the promise that no matter where a senior citizen age 60 or older lives in the county, they can get meal delivery service from one of the entities in the county. Because I'm part of that. I'm part of that state system that allows us to do that, part of the county system that allows us to do that. You can see the passion that I'm talking about as far as providing services to seniors. I'm in their homes. They tell me things that they want me to hear, because not only am I an individual that runs a program, but they know I'm running for this office. They know that I've been able to get the job done these last 20 years, and I'm trying to tell you that I can too, and I can continue that as your next Assemblyman. I'd like that opportunity. Vote November 4th. I guess the last thing to say is, from both of us, get out to vote. Don't vote because of me or because of Andy. Take this opportunity, go out and vote. You need to vote. Go do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
How's that?
I get the last word, guys. I want to thank you both gentlemen for taking time out of your busy campaigning schedule. I know it's crazy season, but I've enjoyed your candor and your personal passion in expressing your views on things. I hope the folks that are watching today and throughout the week to come, because this is going to go on forever. This show will be put on YouTube, I'm sure, and will be a regular feature every year, just like the Christmas Story. All right, we've covered a lot of serious matters here today, and I hope that each one of you that are watching us will be weighing what each candidate has said, and will, in fact, go to the polls on November 4th. And as we often say, people live and die in countries trying to get that opportunity to vote. And so, again, I thank you for coming in and letting us hear in our own homes what you think and what you feel about our area and our state. So at this point in time, I want to thank you for tuning into Destination Chautauqua County. And I'm Doc Hamels, and I want to thank Chris Burt, Randy Burt, Jeff Zook, and Justin Burt for putting the show together. We'll see you all again, perhaps next year. Who knows who we'll have then. Take care.